Well, hello there, good people. Hi, I'm Jason with Green Country Agroforestry. Coming to you today from the, the south side of the front yard area. Well, for this house, north side of the driveway for this lot over here. This is an area that gets sun pretty much all day long. We're in there, and I've noticed that whenever I try to plant things in this particular area, well, a lot of them just die. Getting baked all day long is rough on things. This is a peppermint that I have planted. We have 5 peppermint plants along this border here. We used to have 8. There was one there, there was one there, there was another one, oh, right down over there by your feet. But all this baking heat makes it really, really hard for these plants to grow. It's hard for water to be retained in this particular area, even with a layer of mulch on top. And that's because the quality of the soil underneath here is not that good. The houses in this area were built during the Second World War with the intention of providing starter homes for returning GIs. And they were built cheaply and without a whole lot of consideration for a few things. This particular patch just happens to be the place where they dumped a lot of their junk gravel and clay and other building materials while they're creating the foundation areas for the houses. So the subsoil underneath here is nothing like the subsoil in the rest of the yard. The rest of the yard subsoil is all sand. Here we have actually some clay, but it's not good clay. It's that waste building material that they put in this area here. So we have a bunch of challenges. The biggest challenge, of course, what we're having at the moment is keeping this area hydrated. So I thought about it, and I think I've come up with a potential solution. Let's have a look. An Oya is a clay pot, terracotta pot, unglazed, that, although I don't know exactly who started using it for irrigation purposes, it was introduced to the Americas by the Spanish during the period of colonial expansion. Maybe somebody out there knows. Alright, so an Oya is a clay pot, a terracotta pot, unglazed, which is buried in the ground up to its neck and then filled with water. The idea is the unglazed pottery will allow the water to seep through gradually over time, wicking away into the soil as the soil becomes dehydrated. This is a wonderful idea. Of course, Oyas are expensive, unless of course you're making your own, but I don't happen to have the facilities for making good pottery at the moment, so I'm not making my own. We were tempted to try this alternative, which is a terracotta clay spike, along with the old wine bottle filled with water. The idea is simple. You soak the terracotta spike so that it's thoroughly saturated with water, fill the wine bottle full of water, turn it upside down, plant the spike in the ground, and now you have the same effect as the Oya, but there is a fly in the ointment, and there's the reason why I don't use these. You can see the body of the Oya is very wide and it has a lot of surface area, which means the water can wick away at a certain rate from the Oya as it's needed. By contrast, the terracotta spike only has a small amount of surface area and not much water can be transmitted through it in a reasonable amount of time. So you'd have to use a whole bunch of wine bottles stuffed into terracotta spikes to accomplish the effect of one single Oya. And that leaves me with a problem. I can't afford Oyas to put all along this entire strip to make sure that it remains hydrated. And as we've just discussed, the terracotta spikes really aren't going to get the job done for me either. I don't have that many wine bottles, and I don't want to accumulate that many wine bottles for one reason. So, how am I going to be able to get this area to be watered without using electricity? Hey, I have a lot of cement blocks. I use them for projects all the time. I don't really use them for doing things like building a water reservoir. Well, I might use them to build a stand to put a water reservoir on, but I wouldn't use them for building a water reservoir because the water would just leak out. The question is how fast, and can I control how fast? Maybe if I add an extra lining of clay, I might be able to make something like an Oya with the materials I already have available to me. Let's go get some blocks. Intense seasonal hailstorms made it impossible to maintain a holly-covered little mini greenhouse here in between the two houses, but I used a lot of concrete blocks when setting it up, so I have those available, scattered about. We'll gather these up, and we'll gather up some pavers, and we'll see what we can make out of it. Good exercise, good exercise. These things get heavy. We brought this one here. This is a 8x8 block. But towards the end, and we'll have these to go across the bottom. Big ones, put at the sides. Might have somewhat like this. There we go. There. Moving these blocks, it's a lot of hard work. Wouldn't it be great if I could just snap my fingers and have them all moved already? Now for a little bit of math. Our blocks are 8 inches high, and the gap between them is likewise about 8 inches. This means if we want to go with water 1 inch per week, evenly distributed on either side of our canal, we would have a total of 8 inches. So 4 on this side, 4 on this side. Each of those 8-inch bits are going to be 8 inches across. So 4 times 8, that's 32 inches. We can have this arrangement 32 inches from one side and expect it to have a reasonable chance of keeping things up to 32 inches out there, hydrated if one full channel load is distributed per week. That's the idea. But let's measure off and get to digging. So we'll find that we are right about 32 inches away from the side over here. We're at 32 inches here, would be 32 inches. So let me take my peg and move it over just a skosh. There we go. Okay, and then we'll go 32 inches. Oh, that's another way over here. 32 inches from there. That puts me here. That's placed pretty good. I don't need to do much with this one except just give it a good push. Hitting some clay and gravel down there though. That's it. All right. See, clay and gravel. Oh, hard for roots to get through. Okay, now I measured off 24 inches, 24 inches. We've got the outer boundaries selected. We're gonna have to cut off the little bit of Bermuda grass that we've got here. It's dead this time of year because there's just no moisture in the ground. We'll have to cut through that and remove this top layer of mulch. I'll probably move that downhill to where the surviving peppermint plants are. A little extra mulch isn't going to hurt them. That's going to expose the soil underneath, and once we reach soil horizon, we'll find something to pack the soil on, or put the soil on so it doesn't disrupt anything. We'll find out how bad the soil is underneath here. But it's hot out here. There's no shade Gotta go get a drink real quick. Whew. Cool off. Too hot. Too hot. Well, we got our mulch pulled back, and now the sun's just dropped behind those trees over yonder. Actually, there's a big sycamore, and it's just on the other side of that sycamore. So I finally get a little bit of shade to this little spot here. And, oh wow, this is what we have to work with. This is the soil. Oh my goodness. That's mostly clay in there, just not good, not good at all. We're gonna dig this out. Wow, it is so hard. This soil is so hard. No wonder nothing's growing in here. The soil is like a rock. It's like a rock. Look at this. It's just a big chunk of, I mean, that's mostly clay. Not good stuff. Not good to grow in. Should have brought my pickaxe. Yeah, I'd have an easier time digging with a pickaxe, I think. Okay, good people, well, this is still on my mind and fresh. We talked a lot about no-till gardening and why this is such a good approach. We allow the soil microbiology to build up over time by adding organic material on top and not digging down into the soil to disturb the microbiology. But as you can see from looking at this material here, this is clay, essentially clay slip. It crumbles to a fine powder whenever it's dry, if you can break it up. Just dust. There's hardly any organic matter in it, and as a result it has no microbiology. And this is one of those cases where, yes, go ahead, dig it up. If you've got this stuff that you're working with, go ahead and drag the plow through it, break it up, add your organic matter, get some gypsum in it. Maybe if you don't have little bits of rock or something else that gives you different size particles, get some different size particles of things in there. Gravel, rock, seashell, whatever you can get your hands on. Biochar is a great thing to add in at this point if you're going to be digging it up and breaking up your clay clumps so you can actually have some soil and not just a lump of clay. Anyway, I'm going to get back to it. All right, well, look at this. Some of these blocks are just this is a huge chunk right there. Ugh. I throw it in the wheelbarrow, it doesn't break up. Boy, better dig this out. This is not a rock. It's a lump of clay. Once the excavation has been completed and the bottom carefully leveled off, we can start stacking the papers down at the bottom. These blocks into place. There we go. Okay. Get over here. So here's the basic design for our little irrigation feature. This central trough, which of course will be the full length of the trench, will serve as a reservoir for water, which will fill to here. It's a total of 8 inches from the bottom to the top. So if you can fill it all the way to the top, 8 inches, and then allow that water to slowly disperse into the soil around, well, you should get the equivalent of 1 inch rainfall across the surface of the soil. That's the theory of this. But as you can tell, I could probably do this a good long while, and all that water is just going to run right out for a couple of reasons. Of course, one of them is each one of these blocks, when it comes together in a seam, that's not watertight. That's not watertight at all. And there's nowhere for the water to go except for outside the blocks and into the rest of the trench. That's fine. We do want it to seep out there, but it's going to seep out way, way too fast unless we take some special precautions to seal up those gaps. Fortunately, we have the perfect material to seal those gaps up, and you guess what it is? Of course, if you guess clay, you're right, but we're not going to use this clay. This clay is not really suitable for that purpose because it has so much sand and so much silt in it. It isn't completely impermeable or even quite so set that water can't percolate through it. No, we're going to use a little bit different type of clay. In order to seal up our water feature to keep the water from seeping out too fast, we'll need to add clay. Now I could take this native clay that I've got, well, it's not native, this builder's clay with sand and silt and a little bit of gravel mixed into it. I could put it into a bucket full of water, stir it up really good, take the suspended particles and evaporate the water out of that to leave me with a good solid clay base that I could actually use to seal those joints, but that would be time consuming and I don't have the time. Fortunately, I have something else. Bentonite clay from kitty litter. 100% pure clay. Inconvenient and ready to pour 40-pound containers. So let's go ahead and pour some in right here. Just want to fill up the space in between those blocks right there, and then we'll spread it out. With the blocks out of the way, I'm going to spread this clay out as evenly as I can. It'll give us about a ½ inch of clay surrounding those joints, which should keep them retaining water fairly well. Just like a great big long Oya. Concrete and clay particles. The clay helps out a little bit for leveling purposes. At this point. It's ironic, in South Texas, clay under the soil swelling whenever water comes into contact with it can cause structural damage to houses. But here we're counting on that capability of the clay to swell and expand whenever it becomes hydrated to help seal those gaps. The sun getting ready to set, not too long for now. I'm going to have to work fast. Now I've got the paper set. I can start putting down my blocks. True it up as best I can there. What you're saying, Jason, look, I see what you're doing, that's cool and all, but there's still these gaps here where they come together and meet the papers. I know, we're not quite done yet. We'll get there. Flushed up as neat as possible, and I'll show you our next trick. New blocks have to be used for this particular project. I've got ones that are a lot older that I could use. I mean, they are just getting buried in the ground after all, but the new blocks have nice, neat, unbroken edges, and that's going to come in handy. We're trying to make things fit good and secure and snug and level. Now, gentlemen, if you want to know how to get those good, hard, calloused, sexy hands that the women love, this is how you do it. Pick up rocks, moving around all day long. Your hands will be good and strong and hard. Here's block. Well, there's the end piece right there. You know, bring these together, good and snug, which will happen when we start tamping our soil around to the side of there, and we'll be good to go. Now we just need to seal it on the inside of those, which is what the rest of the clay is for. So here we go. We can take our bentonite clay and put a certain quantity of it into these holes. Probably about 3 handfuls is going to be enough for each hole. So let's do it. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And if some gets in the middle, don't worry, we got crevices down here that can stand to be filled a little bit as well. So it's all good. 1, 2. Now that we've got a good bit of clay inside each one of the holes, some more down the center there to fill in those gaps, and the layer underneath, all we have to do is put in enough to fill up to the level of those lower paper stones to provide the seal on the outside. We'll get it soaked, put the rest of the clay back in, the clay that came out of the hole, tamp it down, fill her up with water, and see if it holds. Oh, that's plenty. 40-pound bag, gets heavy. I guess I should point out, if you've got a freshwater spring, don't go packing clay in around it. You're likely to wind up plugging it up so it doesn't work properly. But if you've got a place that you're relying upon rainfall or water that you pump to keep it full of water, and it drains a lot, get some good pure clay, pack that good around that location, and it should hold water much better for you. Now, these concrete blocks are going to sweat. They're going to seep water over time, just like an unfired clay pot will. And of course, those seams, although they've got clay around them, aren't going to form perfect seals. Those are going to seep as well. My only hope is that they'll control the seepage well enough that when we fill this trough here up with water, it could take the better part of a week to seep all the way out. Alrighty, ready. Now all we need to do is get out here with some of that material that we gathered together the other day. I'm going to put that down in here around the edges. And then we'll tamp it down with the sludge in here, which will break up any of those little clumps. Further seal those gaps there. The idea is I want it to leak, but I want it to leak slow. And this is yesterday's when you saw me spraying that water over there, and I still have some of these cavities where the water is still in it. There's a little bit of water still standing in the middle of the trough there. So I know it's going to hold, and it's going to release slowly. Hopefully that's just a little bit of constant moisture that we're going to need to allow the soil's microbial activity to convert this from a barren wasteland into a minor oasis. Now that we've got the soil packed around on the outside, I'm going to take some soil suitable for planting in, horticultural compost, and a little sand, a little clay, a little this, a little that, you know, the usual stuff. General all-around potting mix. And we're just going to fill up these holes. Fill up the holes, now get something to plant in. Alright. We'll hose all this off. And we'll be good to go. We'll see about getting something planted in this area here. Pass that through the sifter before I pour it out. Knock it down a little bit. Each one of these little cells, and there's going to be 22 of them all together, acting kind of like its very own little miniature flower pot. Imagine that. Each was his very own little flower pot, just running down the length of this irrigation feature. There's a word that comes to mind. It's not a commonly used word. It's not English in origin. It's actually an Arabic origin. It's called a wadi. A wadi is typically a seasonal riverbed or creek bed. It's a place that has water in it whenever the rainy season's on, and it's dry the rest of the year. But one of the things about wadis that you might know, if you spend some time knocking around in arid regions, is even though they may run dry, there's always moisture in the ground surrounding them. They retain moisture in the areas where they exist. So if I've got an area that could benefit from a feature like that, maybe you've got an area that could benefit from a feature like that, you might consider building your very own artificial wadi, a place where the water will gather and stay during the dry season. Now that we've got those holes filled in, just going to take a little bit of our mulch here, spread it all the way up to the edge. All the way up to the edge. Not much yet. Ironically, I'm going to be moving all this mulch back out of the way here in a day or two, but in the interest of completing one project before moving on to the next, we'll go ahead and mulch around this spot so you can have the proper impression for how it looks prior to planting. We're getting ready to do a little overhaul of this area. Now that I know that this is all really bad clay infested soil, I'm going to have to do some work on it, so I'll be breaking off the mulch and breaking it up with the tool, working some gypsum down in there to flocculate the clay particles, getting some organic matter in there, and maybe dropping in some biochar. And then with this extra water feature here, that should turn this area into a very fertile area of the yard instead of the dead place. Alright, so now we're going to set this on flood setting. Turn it on. And let it go. Okay, I'd like for you to imagine for a moment that you're a hard-working professional person. You've got a job that you work for about 40 hours a week. You got a little bit of time to do some gardening on your weekends, but the afternoon, whenever you get home, you're dead tired, you're beat. You know the plants need to be watered, but you don't want to be spending a whole bunch of time out there with a hose in hand. Any number of things that you could possibly do with your time, but standing out there with a hose is not one thing that really comes to mind. Well, something you can consider doing is building a contraption like this one, maybe not exactly like this one, but using the same general idea. You've got your heavy clay and you want to be able to get water to infiltrate into it so that the microbes can grow and break that down and develop good, healthy soil and not just oxidize your organic matter off the top the way you've been doing. Hey, that's great. Whenever it comes time to water, you just drop the end of the hose in there and let it run. Once you've got it filled all the way to the top, you know that's about an inch of water per week. 32 inches on either side of the water feature. And you see it's just charging itself up right now. I can tell water's a lot higher at this end than at that end, so I've got a bit of a slope. I should have leveled this way more. Now another advantage of putting this trough in here now is over time, the level of the ground here is going to come up by, well, I was going to say by 2, but not by 2 feet, that's not accurate, to a total of 2 feet above where the driveway area is now, which is a little bit above street level, in fact. As that happens, all we have to do is come in here and apply new blocks and a little bit more clay around the joints, and we can continue to build up the soil in this area till we get a total of 2 feet of good organic matter. And then we have that clay substrate underneath, which will, like I said, I'll have broken that up and done some amendments to it so that it won't be just clay. Well, hey good people, that's all I've got for you today. I hope you found this video informative or maybe a little bit entertaining, and if you did, well, you know what to do. I will catch you next time. It's almost full. It's almost full, it's almost full. All right there, good people. If you could direct your attention to, yeah, we're right here. You can see we're filled all the way up to the top now.